tough task ahead for Finance Minister P. Chidambaram as he gets ready to deliver this year's budget. So will it be a please-all budget, a dream budget that will help bring growth back? That's the question we're trying to address in this show today. Hello and welcome. I'm Shweta Rajpal Kohli and we're coming to you today from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, IIM Bangalore, where management students will be asking our panel of guests questions on the budget and the economy. Let me introduce our special guests on the show today. With us here, Mrs. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, clearly one of the most credible faces of corporate India, chairperson of Biocon. Also with us here, Mr. Ravi Ramu, who is the managing partner of Primrose Hotels, Primrose Resorts. Mr. Ravi Ramu also joining us on the show today. Mr. Manish Sabarwal, he is the chairperson of Team Lease Services, which is really India's largest staffing and vocational training firm. Let me start off today's show by getting a sense from Mrs. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw as to whether she thinks this will be a responsible budget. Mrs. Shaw, the Finance Minister has clearly assured the people of India that he is going to deliver a responsible budget. Do you think he's up to the task?
Well, he has a very challenging time ahead because I think we are staring at a very large fiscal deficit, a large current account deficit, and I think we have to balance, subsidies and SOPs with incentives. I mean, is he going to be addressing, populist kind of, needs of the country, or is he going to really be responsible and, bite the bullet and take some hard decisions? I, for one, believe that this is a time when we can very innovatively balance the budget, and I look forward to seeing how Mr. Chidambaram is going to, handle this very challenging time. Does he have any rabbits to pull out?
All right, does he have any rabbits to pull out? That remains the key question, something we're going to find out on the 28th of this month. But my question to Mr. Sabarwal really is as to whether we can expect a budget that will create jobs, because that is the key challenge really, a growth-oriented budget, a budget that will bring jobs to the youth of this country.
Well, budgets don't create jobs, so I think sometimes that is one of the challenges of making something like this an event. But just like Kiran said, I think the last 5 years has sort of got blown up in believing that district collectors sort of create jobs by paying NREGS wages and stuff like that. I think we have to shift beyond the sort of poetry and the Diet Coke approach to poverty reduction. Diet Coke is sort of, you get the sweetness without the calories. It isn't working. We are 100% of net job creation since 1991 has happened in the informal sector. Only 12% works in manufacturing. So I think the budget has to recognize that building a habitat or a fertile soil for job creation is going to require fiscal discipline. It's going to require a focus on infrastructure. And I think all the low-hanging fruit has been picked. So we do have to think about some of the difficult issues like education, employment and labor laws.
All right, education, employment, labor laws, those are the critical issues that Mr. Sabarwal is talking about there. But are we expecting too much from the budget? Are we expecting it to be too much of a game changer? Unduly high expectations there from an event? Mr. Ramu, your take on that?
Yeah, I think, Shweta, the writing is on the wall actually. We need excellent economics and perhaps decent politics. Excellent economics meaning, he's got to get rid of some syndromes. 3 to be precise. The first one is this deferred dreams syndrome. What's the deferred dream? I think the consumers in India are deferring 2 specific dreams at the moment. One is to buy a car, the other one is to buy a house. So enough needs to be done. Too much has been talked about inflation. I think it's a supply side driven problem. Not so much an interest rate problem.
Right.
We come from industries where interest rates mean the world. And he doesn't seem to want to do anything. So that's pathetic. Then there is this issue of actual consumer demand. So the dreams which have been deferred need to be undeferred. They need to be unleashed. Actually, savings rates have increased in the country. What a statistic. How many people know that? So people are earning, so we have the salary increases decent enough, but they are saving, not spending. That's where the jobs come. Then the second syndrome, I think, which really hurts us is the subsidy syndrome.
Sure.
I think enough has been said. Oil and the other bit is fertilizers. Fertilizers, he needs to rationalize it, not remove all the subsidies. The third one is the sector syndrome. That is the private sector and the public sector. There is a lot of money sitting in the public sector. In the sick units, those properties are worth the moon. They're all locked up, they're in disputes, the people are there, the unions are there. That needs to be unshackled. The other bit in the private sector, for heaven's sake, we need investments.
Okay.
We need investments from outside and from India. So that's the
We'll try and address what he can do to ensure that the private sector starts investing, because that's the critical bit really. I'm going to now throw open the house and get students to really ask questions to our panel of experts. We've got this young lady here who wants to ask a question. Go ahead.
My question is regarding the general nature of the budget, that given this is the budget before election, so it's more likely to be populist, but as our finance minister has said that he's targeting an austere budget to bring down the fiscal deficit. So how is government going to balance this, like towards which side it would be more inclined?
Well, I think like both Ravi and Manish said, I think we need to make sure that we get investment back on track. I think today there is a deep concern about India Inc. not investing because of lack of confidence that it has in the economy. Now, how are we going to bring back investment? Have we got any policy for manufacturing? I think manufacturing is a huge opportunity for India, but there are no clear policies. Cost of capital is too high. I think we need to look at the manufacturing sector and make sure that we start investing in manufacturing. Agriculture, there is a huge opportunity in agriculture. Are we doing enough to incentivize it, or are we just, focusing on populist policies of offering, free power and loan waivers? I mean, this is not what the agricultural sector needs, because I think the poor will only be able to be lifted out of poverty if we really start investing in growth and development. I think that's really the focus I would like to see for this government.
And we're already talking about growth slipping to 5% levels. That will be a sure disappointment really for a country like India.
We've wasted a lot of time. I'm sorry to say, but this government has wasted very precious time over the last 4 years. We could have done a lot more. We could have taken bold decisions, and they have finally started taking those bold decisions. But is it a little too late?
Right, too little and too late is the big question, and that's the big worry also. Let me take a question from the back right here. Yeah, go ahead. You have a question to ask.
Yeah, I have a question to Madam Shaw. So what is the stance on higher rates on super riches, and what about the dividend taxations?
Taxing the super rich, clearly a debate that is going on in the country right now after the finance minister suggested something on these lines. Mrs. Short, since that question has specifically been asked you, I'm going to let you answer before I ask the other panelists too.
I mean, I think taxing the super rich, no one, I think, would, argue on that front. But the fact is, by taxing the super rich, are you solving the economic problems of India? Are you going to be able to raise the kind of monies you need to bridge that fiscal deficit? By just taxing the super rich? I don't think so. So you can go ahead and tax the super rich. I have no qualms about that. In fact, I support that. But at the same time, I think we need to look beyond that. I think we need to look at how money is being misspent. For instance, if you look at government spending, I think there's a huge amount of misspending in the government.
Sure. All right, your thoughts on taxing the super rich, Mr. Ramu?
Go ahead and tax them. I think that's overdue anyway. So please tax the super rich, and I won't have any super rich friends.
You're included in that category,
no,
aren't you?
I'm not. That's why I said I won't have too many super rich friends from now on. But I think let's not talk too sort of macro. Let's get specific. Dividends.
Sure.
This is where the super rich gain. Yeah, and they disproportionately gain. There is a big differential between DTT, dividend distribution tax, and the highest marginal rate of income tax. So this is the saving the super rich have out of those humongous dividends which come into their pockets.
Right.
I think that needs to go in one swift move. I think that will bring some kind of an equality into how things work. But I'm not saying tax all dividends. Let there be a limit, maybe to 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, whatever the FM chooses to have. But above a 2 or 3 lakh limit, the differential taxation must go.
Can I add to her?
Sure, Mr.
the tax
Sabharwal, I was
issue?
coming to you.
Because the question you're asking is about income inequality. And I think, there was a wonderful experiment in 2009 in India. The 5% of the richest people in India lost 40% of their wealth.
Right.
And the poor didn't give a damn. You improved your Gini coefficient, which measures inequality, in 2009 by huge, right? 5% of India lost 40% of their wealth, so India's Gini coefficient improved substantially. I don't think the poor were particularly better off in 2009 than they are today. So I think we've spent many years in this politics of envy, in this sort of beating down success. I think let's move to a politics of positivity.
Inclusive growth is clearly something where we've clearly failed to deliver. Would you not agree?
I don't agree, because your first definition of poverty only included a calorific value of nutrition. Now you're adding healthcare. Now you're adding education. So what you're doing is you're redefining poverty. You're including more stuff in that basket. When I was born, India's definition of poverty was 1200 calories a day. Now you've thrown in healthcare, now you've thrown in education, which is progress. But when you redefine something, you have to make sure you recalibrate your numbers.
So you believe that India is moving forward in its aim of reducing poverty, and we need to
Absolutely.
ensure...
Are we moving fast enough? You can compare things to where we were or where we could be. Where we could be, obviously we're all disappointed. But where we were, I think it's a little unfair over the last 20 years to say that India has not made progress.
Okay, and you're saying that the wealthy are unfairly targeted, really, and all the time constantly saying that, tax the super rich is possibly not the best answer. Is that what you're saying? Disincentivizing wealth creation isn't something we should do.
I think we need role models. I think we need success, and I think we should try and emulate success rather than beat it down.
Can I just make a statement there? I think this country needs to focus on entrepreneurship. I think when you're talking about inclusive economic development and job creation, I really think that's one area we have underinvested in. We need to create that huge investment climate for entrepreneurship. It's not there.
Right.
You ask any entrepreneur today how tough it is to start a business. India is not an easy country to start a business. How do we change that? I think that's where we need to focus. In fact, one of the ideas I have is that if you have started this whole climate of CSR, corporate CSR,
social responsibility,
can we get corporates to invest in entrepreneurship? When you talk about inclusive economic development, there is one little point of view that I have which may not align with Manish's view, which is that yes, surely I think poverty has not increased. It has improved over time. But at the same time, we have not given them opportunities of growth, okay? I don't think we have done enough to really make their lives better in the greater scheme of things. And to me, it's about real jobs. We are not creating real jobs. The National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme does not create real jobs. How do we create those real jobs? That is the focus for us.
Let's get one question from the back. I think the lady there. Yeah, go ahead.
My question is on infrastructure financing. Infrastructure is really the engine that drives growth in emerging countries like India. India's infrastructure sector is really a matter of concern right now. What measures can we expect in this budget, specifically in the area of infrastructure financing? And secondly, how successful have been the measures of the past budget, like the creation of an infrastructure debt fund?
Okay, very good question there on infrastructure. Maybe we'll get Mr. Ravi Ramu to answer that question, given that he is in a related industry.
It's the real estate concept which needs to come into infrastructure. Otherwise, we won't get those roads, bridges, whatever, and airports built. The real estate sector needs to be an industry to start with. For everybody's reckoning, we know 5% of the GDP comes directly out of the real estate industry. Yet, no bank wants to lend to the industry. Maybe the industry is to blame, so we'll keep that argument aside. So please don't ask me questions on that. Right. But whoever is to blame, the houses, the offices, the colleges, the schools have to be built. So we need an industry to start with. Secondly, we need homes to live in. Forget jobs. First, let them have a shelter on their heads. They don't have shelters. The roads will get built if the townships get built. The roads will get built if the schools and colleges get built. So let's look at the root of the problem, tackle real estate, and also feed it with the right type of finance.
I think someone had a question also on aviation. Yeah, go ahead, because that's another sector that's really crying for help and is asking for taxes to come down.
Yeah, so my question on aviation is, everybody knows what is happening in Indian aviation industry. And in fact, Richard Branson once said that if you are a billionaire, go and open an airline industry. So the point is, government has come up with a welcome move like 49% FDI, and we are seeing that translating actually. AirAsia has come up with Tata recent news. But then the whole point is, the biggest deterrent is the taxes. So I think government needs to come up with rationalization of taxes, again I must say, and cutting on the duty on fuel, because that is something that hits the airline industry hard. So do you see anything forthcoming in this budget?
I think Mrs. Shaw and Mrs. Sabharwal both can answer that question. Mrs. Shaw, if every sector goes on asking for rationalization of taxes, where does the government make up its revenues from?
Well, you know, I don't expect to see much of relief for the aviation sector this time at least, because it should. I mean, I do believe that, you know, the fuel surcharge has really crippled this industry, and I think given the fact that you're suddenly seeing airlines announce discounts again, I don't think the government is going to view this as a sector that needs help at the moment, except for you know, one airlines, which is Kingfisher Airlines, and it certainly went down because of the huge crippling fuel costs. But having said that, I also believe that when you look at the kind of rationalization of taxes that you're talking about, I think there is a need for that, Shweta. Whether it happens or not, I'm very skeptical, because it's one thing to say that the government needs revenues, but I think the government needs those revenues, and it needs to do that by cutting back on subsidies. That's my view.
Okay,
I don't know whether it will do it.
Really, tough call really when you have your eye on elections also. Mr. Sabharwal, real estate, aviation, those are sectors again where we're talking about rationalization of taxes. Those are also sectors where we're expecting a lot of job creation to take place. At the same time, concerns that these sectors are suffering badly.
Well, I mean, aviation is not unique to India. There's a birth defect in any industry which transports people all over the world. Railways, buses and airplanes don't make money anywhere in the world. I don't understand why, but India is not being singled out by economics for some bad economics in aviation. All over the world, trains, planes and buses do not make money. It's vanity businesses, it's cool. That's different. People can do what they want, but they don't make money, so they're always bad for shareholders. Warren Buffett said if, you know, airline shareholders had been around when the Wright brothers took their flight, they should have shot them down. Because the reality is, planes, trains and buses don't make money. A fuel surcharge even being reduced is not going to make them wildly profitable. So leave airlines aside. I'm not going to focus on real estate. Her infrastructure question, to me, I'd like to say is that I'm not sure there's going to be anything in the budget related to infrastructure financing, because the problem with infrastructure is not infrastructure financing. So you made a point that banks are already struggling, which means all these infrastructure companies were financially closed.
Right.
So the problem wasn't in financing, it's in executing the damn project, in land acquisition, in a road, in environmental acquisition.
To clearances, land acquisition.
So it's not related to financing. India's infrastructure deficit is no longer related to the lack of money.
Financing.
It is related to the regulatory cholesterol around environment, around approvals, and everything which is non-financial. So India's infrastructure deficit is no longer starving because of lack of money.
All right, clearly speedy clearance is just one of the demands that we've heard time and again, but a demand that clearly needs to be addressed. That apart, we'll have to wait and see if there will be any positive surprises for specific sectors, but overall, the task for the finance minister will be a tough one, given that he has to bring growth back on track. Many thanks all of you for joining us and sharing your views, and a big thanks to all the students for answering those questions. We'll of course have to wait and see what the finance minister has in store for us. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.